Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Kristen Thomas, who'll be sitting in for Matt Watson today. Hello, Kristen.
Hello. Those are some big shoes to fill.
They are. Now, well, yours are as well. Now, before we get into everything we're going to talk about today, today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io. We can help you build a software development team quickly and affordably. We won't be talking about software today.
Not at all.
No. So, Kristen, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yes, and we are gonna continue our foray into the ever so interesting world of sex coaching.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm officially a certified sex coach now.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
well, we were going to get, so for those of you, if you want to catch up, it's not too late to hit pause and go back and look for the episode that Kristen was on in 2019 that was, I believe, titled The Sex Coaching Business.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a real business.
Yes, it is.
And
Business of sex coaching is real.
And apparently it's something that you can get a certification for. So let's actually start there.
Okay.
How do you
Let's do that.
become a certified sex coach?
Well, just like there's certifications out there for becoming a personal trainer or a massage therapist, there's several schools out there that offer a certification program. And did my research, and there's probably 10 to 12 right now.
Okay.
And I found one that I felt worked best for me because it was mostly online at my pace. The people providing the information are well qualified. My professor, Dr. Patty Britton, has been a clinical sexologist for over 35 years, I believe it is. And she got her start at Planned Parenthood of New York as a sexuality educator and health advocate. So, it also had an in-person component. I had to go to Los Angeles and do a seminar, about 20 hours worth of work. But it was all, the first half focused on sexology. The second half focused on the business aspect, being an entrepreneur and being a good coach.
Yeah, and that's actually, so when you came in and recorded your prior episode, which once again, you can go find it in the feed. Matt and I had a lot of interesting questions about.
Of course, everyone does.
Well, sure, about what that is. And I want to expand on that a little bit because we talked somewhat about the business part of what you do, but really it was just like two
teenagers,
two middle-aged adult men.
Where do we start?
I was asking a lot of questions for a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Which was clearly Matt Watson.
I mean, he seems like he's doing pretty well now.
Yeah. So, and that was all because of that episode.
Good. I will take credit. Thank you.
100% the transformation that occurred with Matt was due to Kristen. Now,
I'm very happy for him.
Now, I don't want to get too far. Your company is named Open the Doors Coaching.
Yes.
Found on Instagram at Open the Doors KC. Same thing as Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Open the Doors Coaching on the Facebook and OpenTheDoorsCoaching.com.
Yes. That's branding there, right?
I'm thinking that if I Google Open the Doors Coaching, I'll find all of it. Where's the LinkedIn?
Well, I mean, I've got my personal, and I do have a LinkedIn page.
I just want to make sure that you're covering all the bases.
It's so hard to cover all the bases on social media. I guess the one thing I don't have right now is Pinterest. I just don't see much of a need for that right now. I'm not one to post like the motivational memes on my Instagram page. It's more of like,
thank you.
Here's the things and events that I'm doing. Here's my podcast episode, because I do also now have my own.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's talk about that too. 53 episodes.
Yes. I like puns, so it's called Keep Them Coming with Open the Doors Coaching.
I've always, and you do refer to yourself as a head coach.
Yes. I'm the owner and head coach of Open the Doors Coaching.
Yes.
Usually people don't get that joke. Yeah.
At first it took me a minute, and then I was like, oh, I get it.
Usually it's when I'm at the LGBT Chamber of Commerce that people look at that for the first time and have a nice chuckle. Although I did change my card now that I'm done with my program. It says certified sex coach.
So there's an actual Chamber of Commerce
Yeah, the
for that?
LGBT chamber, the
And
Mid-America
that's separate?
LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Yes, it
First
is.
off,
we
it's
are the third largest, I believe, in the country right now. Fifth
okay.
largest.
So that's a national thing.
It is national.
I was going to
Yeah,
say,
we're
if that's
just a
local, shame on
affiliated
us
chapter.
locally for even needing to have a separate
Oh,
one.
it's just
but-
affiliated nationally. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about becoming a certified sex coach. And if I wanted, so we kind of, used last episode to ask some interesting questions for a friend, as we'll say. But let's just say that in this case, I'm now interested in pursuing a career as a sex coach.
Mm-hmm.
So and we didn't get into the business. We talked about the business of this somewhat before, but let's actually make this in a way a bit of a how-to guide.
Sure.
So, what is the path of wanting to do that? Like, who is usually in a good spot to pursue this career path?
Great questions. Well, first off, let's start with who I think is good for this career path. I think people who have just an innate curiosity about their sexuality or other people's sexuality, or about relationships. People have been clinical therapists or social workers. Myself, I have a degree in psychology, and I had always thought I would go back to grad school and get my license to become a therapist, but grad school got really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then I also, through being a weight loss coach, found that the approach that I really prefer for myself to help people with is more the coaching approach rather than a therapy approach.
Okay.
Therapy is great. I am a big advocate for therapy, and sometimes people need to see a therapist before they see me. Therapy is for the past, and coaching is about the future and about kind of moving forward. So it's sort of the two-part process in helping people change their lives.
Okay, so now there's a big difference in the term coach and therapist, because therapist is like a real license.
Oh yeah, you have a license.
That's
yes,
like
you
an
are,
actual, like a
overseen by the state.
that's like a medical thing,
You can take
right?
health insurance,
Okay.
all that stuff, absolutely. But it's highly, highly regulated. So
Sure.
yeah, there's less regulation with coaching, but it's also just a very different aspect of what we're helping people with.
And one of the things we talked about last time, and like I said, go back and find that episode for all the details there. That was actually, we looked back and we thought that was one of the funnest episodes, just
Thank you.
because it was interesting. It wasn't in the normal purview of what we would have been talking about.
Yeah.
We typically don't discuss what a masturbation plan
I know,
entails.
right?
Yeah, but we know now.
Yes.
So
So again, who's good for it? People who are kind of in the helping fields, people who have a degree in psychology, but find that maybe they don't want to be a therapist, or that's down the road, things like that. And as far as how, like I say, there are lots of programs out there. A quick Google search will provide you several programs. I find that it's best to do your research and decide what you're wanting long term. And that was kind of what I have in mind. I do want to get my master's, and I do want to get my PhD, because I think Dr. Kristen Thomas sounds amazing.
sure.
But that's down the road when I can afford it.
But these things that you're mentioning, so, when I talk about startups and I talk about businesses or anything, just the general term street cred, it matters. So I'll give you an example. A few years ago, when I was exiting the ticket business that we had been in for 8 years, which, by the way, we'd done really well at, wasn't happy doing that stuff, and I wanted to change. And part of my plan for reinvention was to write my first 2 books, which I did, and they came out shortly after we exited that given business. But I wrote those books to establish a higher level of credibility for myself. So when you look at something like a certification, is that part of why you would get that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, saying that I have a degree in psychology and I used to be a weight loss coach was only something that was going to take me so far. I did reach out to SCORE and get a business mentor, and she helped walk me through so many different things.
So what's SCORE?
SCORE is part of the Small Business Administration, but it's a group of folks who volunteer to be mentors to aspiring entrepreneurs.
A form of coaching.
Yes, exactly. So I got my own coach.
Okay.
She helped me pick my business name out. She helped me brainstorm that whole session. She
Now,
helped
was
me
this someone that was
focus.
general with business?
She was a business coach.
So, but
And
that
she was
can
very
apply.
open-minded.
That can apply to you say a business coach, and that's good though, because
she had been somebody who, I think she'd been a financial advisor for a while, and then she got more into like coaching women-owned businesses, like small practices, small, people like myself who are probably going to be a solopreneur, not necessarily build up like this whole I don't know, hierarchy underneath of them.
Well, you're kind of working on that, whether you
well,
know it or not.
I know I'll eventually have, yes.
Well, I mean,
Building an empire is what I say.
When it comes to coaching, and I'm gonna not say that I have a deep background with it, but I've definitely mentored people, and I think that as the leader of a company, that the coaching thing is kind of important.
Absolutely.
So I do spend a lot of
is.
time coaching people. I wasn't sure if that was an avenue that I would pursue. It was something I considered after I wrote a book about finding balance in your personal, professional, and physical life. And by the way, the sex side of things is complicated for people. But I don't get too far into that.
Well, maybe for volume 2, we can put our heads together here.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. It's interesting. I tell people a lot that the avoidance of conversations about sex, religion, and politics are usually a good idea. And I say that because in most cases you probably have more to lose than to gain.
In social and business situations, yes. But when you're talking about someone that you're thinking about dating or things like that, those are the primary things
different
about.
scenario. But especially in the workplace, like part of my presentation for people about from Balance Me is keep those topics out of your mouth at work, because you just get yourself in trouble.
This is true.
Now maybe not at your job,
right?
But generally, those are things that the reason is your chance of being closely aligned with someone in any of those topics is not probably there,
right?
And so you
probably shouldn't be talking about what you do on the weekends with your kink. At the water cooler,
that's just not appropriate at work.
It has its time and its place, but that's not it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
because you don't know who's going to hear. You don't that's just I'm with you.
Okay, so I Googled becoming a sex coach, and I listened to all 53 episodes of your podcast, which was very informative, along with the one you recorded last year. And I'm feeling well equipped to move forward with my. I've now picked a certification. Once again, how long did that take?
That took me 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I took my time with the sexology part because I really wanted, there's a lot of reading. There's a lot of writing.
What's covered in sexology?
Female issues, male issues, couples issues, gender identity issues, talking about actual physical ailments that someone might need to go get medical attention for that we're not really equipped to help with. Talking about like sexual development from, a young age through adulthood. Because it's good to understand the entire life cycle of our sexual development. Okay. Understanding what's age appropriate too for those things. How do we get out in the community and educate people about STI prevention, all that stuff?
Real actual issues, not just sex.
Yeah. My favorite part of the seminar was really when I went in person in LA and had to do the 20 hours of work. One thing that they were trying to do is kind of bombard us with a lot of imagery and information and help us see what are we okay with and what are we not okay with. That way we can really determine what populations we're cool working with and what we're not. Because if you're not okay working with transgender individuals, don't work with them. There's plenty of people out there who will, but don't put yourself in that position.
Part of the process is getting what you... Okay. So part of this process too is
know yourself.
Is understanding
all of it's about figuring yourself
out. Is understanding the niche or wherever. And this is a weird example, but like you look at a hairstylist, like some of them like only cutting men's hair, some of them only like doing women's hair.
Some of them want to do color.
You got to figure that out. And if you're not happy doing it and you end up doing it all day,
some just want to dye and highlight hair and they don't really want to do like the updos for weddings. Some people specialize in doing that. Absolutely.
I think so. For my future sex coaching business, I might actually struggle working with women. And some of that might be my own personality because I'm very direct and I'm not trying to make any male feel.
Maybe you need to just be a coach for dudes.
Well, that's okay. Right. So, that said.
And maybe you want to focus on married men and not single men.
Sure. Okay.
And maybe you do kind of work with single men a little bit, but it's not your bread and butter.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I also try to be very clear about on my website is, with populations that I do focus on most and what I'm
are
cool
those?
with. I work with couples. I work with singles, anybody on the queer spectrum. I don't care what your orientation or gender identity is. But
Well, then who don't you work with?
my primary targets are people in their 30s to 50s.
Okay.
I tend not to work with people that are in their 60s and 70s. I think there's other people out there that are better equipped for that. I mean, I've got to stay in my lane, which is what I know. And I don't know much about senior sex. Maybe one day when I am myself a senior, I'll evolve into more of a Barbara Streisand
That was my next
Fockers
question.
type coach, but I'm not there yet.
That was my next question.
I can still bend over and touch my toes. So
but part of, sometimes part of coaching comes from dipping into your own experience and what you've dealt with. And
absolutely.
That's why sometimes, you go back to having the business coach that you had. So in business school, they often use the term widgets.
Mm-hmm.
And widgets is just the general anything. Like the Acme Corp makes widgets.
Yes.
And so much of business in general, regardless of what you're doing, is widgets. Like it's very replaceable. It's very repeatable. There are certain things in business that just need to happen. And if they're not happening, you're fundamentally flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why a general coach in certain regards can be very helpful. Like once again, it doesn't matter. 80% of it's probably similar, whether you're a sex coach or a software company or a bakery. There are you need an employment ID number and just just different stuff like that that is universal across industries. And that's where general coaching and
yes, I needed a coach to tell me what I needed to know for the business aspect.
Yep.
Like I was able to figure out what I needed on my personal education side, but as far as being an entrepreneur, that was where I needed a business coach. And I also went through Kaufman Fast Track New Ventures. I took tons of classes through the UMKC SBDC.
Let's back up because we have more listeners outside of our hometown than here. But the Kaufman organization. So Ewing Kaufman used to own a pharmaceutical company. He was also the owner of the Kansas City Royals at one point. He left a significant, you talk about, here's a pun, endowment.
Yeah.
It's a perfect episode for that, right? For that word. But he left to kind of help with his legacy. Both he and Barnett Hellsberg have created significant entrepreneur programs here in Kansas City.
Yep.
And I find it to be really helpful. I love the Hellsberg one. It's called Hemp.
I know.
I just think it's funny. So with that, they do work with a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses to help them get started. The Kaufman Foundation is actually pretty big. So Ned, was that helpful?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Because again, I needed to know what I need to do on the business end to make it legitimate. Getting my business license, getting the FEIN, doing all that stuff, figuring out what I needed to know for financials. Like that is part of the problem with a lot of people who are in service-oriented businesses like myself is that they're very good at practicing their thing, being a massage therapist, being a trainer, being a healer, whatever. But they're not necessarily great entrepreneurs. They're not great small
that's
business
common
owners.
across not just service. Right? That's because people tend to want to monetize their passion, or their hobbies. Yes. And with that, you talk about service, but let's say
photography business. Yeah.
Let's say a guy that makes rocking chairs. He's like, man, I just make these amazing rocking chairs. At some point, someone's like, you should make these for a business.
Yeah.
And they start doing all that stuff, and next thing you know, they're in a situation where they have to actually run a business. Mm-hmm. They have to pay taxes. They have to report this, or
they got to figure out their cost of goods,
all of it. Mm-hmm. And that is not their wheelhouse.
Right.
So, but there's a lot of ways to fix that.
Exactly.
I mean, overall,
I took all those classes.
Yeah, you shouldn't let that intimidate you. The basics of business are here in 2020 are pretty easy to figure out. And there's a lot of online platforms and stuff like that really make it a lot easier. You can just look at something like QuickBooks. Mm-hmm. Trust me, the world of the other side of entrepreneurship has created solutions to help you with your problems.
Yes,
so I'm just curious what were a couple of the things that you realized, oh, wow, that you hadn't even considered?
Ooh.
I got a good one while you think about that.
Mhm.
If you
Yeah.
have employees, most people don't realize you have to pay tax on their salaries,
Mhm.
like over and above the tax that's taken out of it. And and in some cases that can be up to 10%. And it's a major budgeting error and
Mhm.
projecting error for people that are planning to start a business. And
Yeah.
if they say, man, I'm going to hire 4 people and those people make $5,000 each a month, and you now look at, having $20,000 in monthly payroll. And if you have to pay 7% tax on that, you're immediately off by $1,400 a month, almost $20,000 a year. And these things, like, they add up in a hurry.
Yeah. Okay, so something that might relate to other, small practitioners like myself is I didn't realize how much of a challenge it would be to find office space that fit my needs.
Sure.
Something that provided privacy, but also provided some community. But co-working spaces don't provide the kind of privacy that I need. So I would say that there is a challenge for businesses like myself to be able to find affordable office space. Maybe at least in this city, but I finally found one. Actually, I'm getting my own dedicated office starting in March. Super stoked about it. No more renting office space elsewhere, multiple days a week and switching around where I'm at. So, and I feel like that's also going to add some legitimacy to what I do.
Sure.
Not, sometimes at a co-working space, sometimes at a therapy office, sometimes at a yoga studio. So,
yeah, I think that sometimes with therapists, though, they do have a tendency to, some of them share offices.
Mhm.
Just because, that sometimes
therapists do that too.
It's geographic.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm in this part of town on this day. I'm in this part of town the other day.
Yep.
I think another thing that people grossly underestimate is some of the reporting responsibilities that you may have to the government, just taxes and stuff like that. And especially if you have payroll.
As a new business and it just being me, I've been able to kind of get away with, the easy things. But, this year I'm going to have to start paying quarterlies, I think.
I suggest not trying to do all that yourself.
I have an accountant.
Like for example.
It's also part of, figuring out what you have the time and the expertise to do versus what you are going to more effectively be able to outsource and just not worry about that minutia. Like, you got to focus on your ROI stuff, like the stuff that's going to give you something, which is, for me, getting out and networking, because I do in-person networking to find clients, and I have built up a really strong referral network. I record my podcast because that brings me clients as well. My podcast has been fun because it's informational. It's sometimes just top stories about people's dating and sex lives. But I have activists, I have healthcare providers, and it gives people a chance to hear me and go like, oh yeah, I could totally go talk to her about my sex life.
That's actually what I was going to say, is that for coaching or any type of thing like that, if people get a chance to listen to you, and they come in and I feel like I know you already.
Right.
Do you hear that?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, we actually hear that here at Full Scale because of Startup Hustle. So sometimes we get clients that come in and we say, well, what brought you in? Oh, I've been listening to your podcast.
Yeah, because you built up that know, like, and trust factor with it.
Yeah. So with that, they feel a lot better about, I don't know, or they've listened to a few different things and they've come to realize that our approach or our mentality, or maybe that we're just not full of shit.
Right.
I mean, that has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah.
And that's, both in my books and on this podcast, we try to be like remarkably transparent.
Well, and you're being your brand.
Sure.
Because you are your brand. Like,
well,
it just
we're really
is.
transparent at the business too. Yeah. When people come in for a meeting, I tell them, I say, look, if I don't think we can help you and do a world-class job, I'm going to tell you right now, because if bringing you on as a client is pointless, it's a huge waste of my time.
Yeah.
And theirs, and they're not going to stick around. So what's the point? So, some of that is, and by the way, I think another thing that business owners, especially in the beginning, don't have a very strong grasp on is that not all clients / customers are good.
No, they're not. And sometimes it's best to not take that client. I learned that a long time ago when I was in the weight loss industry, is that not everyone's ready for what you have to offer.
Yep.
And that's okay.
That's the perfect way to phrase it with what we do. I mean, that we do turn down a lot of clients, and it's just simple. It's like, you don't have the kind of local resources. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, at Full Scale, we help software companies build teams build remote teams in our office in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that that's just an outsourcing kind of thing. It's not. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what we do. Well, it is what we do, but only when it's built around a local presence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where our biggest, fastest growing, highest quality customers come from. Now, we do help a lot of early stage startups, but we're very selective about who they are because they don't typically have the experience, the understanding, and then oftentimes the resources. So when you put someone under immediate financial pressure, well, none of us do the best in life when we're stressed.
Right.
So
Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Just a big pain in the ass is what it is. And then also, like, we were joking before we hit record about the podcast platform we use. And I was like, it's almost perfect. But, I said, I build software, so I give some forgiveness. But yeah, the people that, like, one of the red flags we'll look for is when someone says the 3 companies before have really ruined this. Now, sometimes that might be the case, but that's a huge red flag for me because I'm sitting here thinking, like, is it you? Is it you?
Yeah.
Because it might be. Are we just going to be the 4th? So,
yeah.
All right. So once again, if you go to openthedoorscoaching.com, you can learn more about what Kristen does. And we're going to continue our foray into learning about the sex coaching industry. And I think that a lot of people that whether you're a personal trainer, a weight loss coach, a sex coach, or whatever, they get a certification. They think that this is what they want to do. And then they probably quickly realize that acquiring clients in business is hard.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you what, I think a lot of people do things like, they're like, you know what? I love fitness. I'm going to become a personal trainer. Oh, wow. It's hard to get clients. It's where am I going to work? What am I going to do? How am I going to get out there? How am I going to take care of all that stuff? So let's talk about that. There's so much to consider.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so there's 2 ways to do it, right? You go out and be a solopreneur, or you work for somebody else and utilize your skill level. For what I do, there wasn't really much of an opportunity to work for someone else. But I did find people to partner with. I found people who, again, would kind of show that I had some legitimacy, people who would become referral sources and things like that. I don't think a lot of people realize how much, especially in the first 2 years. I mean, I'm going into my 3rd year in business. The first 2 years were just hitting the ground running with networking events, meeting people, shaking hands, connecting on LinkedIn, adding them to my email list, like just trying to keep my name in front of people. And you got to keep showing up, especially for networking events. You got to keep going to the same groups and showing up.
Was one of the challenges as well that you don't take insurance?
I get asked about it, but I don't think that really makes a huge difference for a lot of people. Especially because most of the time people only see me once a month, whereas usually therapy you're going once a week. So you're going to spend pretty much the same amount anyway on that.
So some of if you're a service provider, especially in the coaching and whatever industry, there's a lot of people that are claiming to do what you do. And probably 80% of them don't have any clients.
Right.
So some of the questions you'll run into is like, well, how many clients do you have? How long have you been doing this? And a whole bunch of stuff like that. And that's where you start to develop that classic chicken and egg problem. You're like, I have 2 clients, and it just doesn't sound like a lot.
Right.
So how do you overcome some of that?
Well, I do have, sorry, you might have to edit this out. Why am I blanking right now?
Oh,
testimonials.
Yes. Sorry.
I do have a section on my website for testimonials.
You coughed.
I totally had
you coughed, and it cleared your whole mental process.
I do have testimonials on my website, and I've asked people for testimonials on my social media pages as well. So there's a little bit of that.
That's actually a great approach, is leaning on those that will say something good about you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One book that influenced me heavily well over a decade ago, I want to say I first read it in 2007, was Raving Fans.
Okay.
It's just kind of one of those short little anecdotal books, like Who Moved My Cheese, and it just talks about you don't want people to just like you, you want people to love you.
Sure.
There's going to be a handful of people who absolutely hate your guts, and
Well, I was
going to
say at the same time, you will never get everyone to love you.
Absolutely
it's
not.
Statistically impossible.
I can count on one hand how many people genuinely hate my guts, and I'm okay with those people hating my guts because I'm not that fond of them either, so that's fine. But I really feel like I have built an army of raving fans because when I go to networking events now, I have people come in going, hey, I have someone to introduce you to. And then the way that they introduce me, like I can see that there's respect. They understand what I do. They believe in my business and they want me to grow.
Do you know what I like
really
about your approach? I like the fact that you just own it. Like you're not like, you're like, hey, I'm a sex coach.
Yep.
And you even I've seen you in wearing a shirt that would say something like "talk to me about sex" or something. Or was it a button?
I have a button that says "penis and vagina are not bad words."
Yeah, something. But that said, it's like
I've got condoms button. I wear a sex, drugs, and rock and roll shirt out sometimes. I do wear things sometimes to start conversations.
It's almost as crazy as wearing gold shoes or something like that. I don't have gold shoes on today. People, I know it's funny because people think I always wear gold shoes. I usually wear them when I go out to an event,
right,
or something like that. Now I've got about 50 pairs of gold shoes.
Oh my gosh.
And I have more shoes that aren't gold than are. So I got to give some love. You point out the Air Jordans. I hadn't worn these for a year. I was like, man, you got to give some love. My wife also told me to quit buying new shoes because I've moved into a second closet with them. So I'm trying to have a stronger rotation there. But
I think that there's quite a marketplace out there for men's shoes.
There is literally. It's just the resale business of it's $8 billion a year. It's nuts.
That's your next podcast guest. Someone who has a successful.
Well, we have a client that is.
Oh my God, for real?
Yeah, I've actually. That's how it got started. So if you read my book, $1 Million Bedroom, one of the interviews is with JC Lopez, who started Urban Necessities, who has partnered with American Eagle and built a very successful business. But
there you go.
Part of the stuff that I did, I actually helped him start his YouTube channel, from day one, and it's coming up on a couple 100,000 subscribers. That would make you a shoe tuber. But look, these things matter. So you talk about the gold shoes. People are like, oh, you must really love gold. Yeah, sure. I like gold shoes. I think it's fun, but people remember that.
Yes.
They really do. And it's kind of funny because if you pick what you're gonna pick it and stick with it. Because I will tell you all right. So this week there's the Kansas City startup to watch.
Oh yeah, I'm going to that Thursday. Yeah.
So, but there'll be 300 people there. If I don't wear gold shoes to that, I will have 20 people that'll be like, dude,
yo,
what's up? Yeah. So I know it's just kind of funny, and who knows, but hey, it is what it is, and that's even spread. So Watson wears gold shoes a lot, and I give away gold shoes. People, it's like you earn them.
Okay.
It's like a trophy. Yeah, you got to do
all right, I'll be watching one day.
For the people that have been in my books.
That's like getting an Ivy Park package these days in Kansas City.
It can be. All right, so back to business. Yeah. But by the way, really all we just discussed was finding ways to look. There's a whole lot of people out there, man, and why do I remember you? Is the real question. Why do you stick out? Why does your name pop into my head when I think about finding a solution? And, what you mentioned was repetition. Yeah. Repetition is important. And then also, I think when you provide content or you talk to people, you got to just be you.
Yeah.
And you need to be open, transparent, here's the thing is if you're faking it, people figure that out really quickly. Really quickly.
Try to show up with as much authenticity as I possibly can. Was it a challenge at first to put my hand out and shake people's hands and say, I'm a relationship, dating, and sex coach? Because before I was certified, that's kind of the way I was billing myself. But then the first time that I shook Sly James's hand.
That's the former mayor of Kansas City.
And my upper lip burst into the sweats. And I know I turned beet red and I said, I'm a sex coach. And he looked at my card and was like, what? And looked at the friends next to me for verification. They just shook their heads like, yep, she's legit. And I gave him my elevator pitch and he gave me a high five and said, I think that's awesome.
I have a feeling that happens a lot.
It happens more often than
Yeah.
I get anything negative. I mean, I
Yeah.
get some odd questions, certainly, but on the whole, people are absolutely fascinated by the fact that I look them in the eye and tell them what I do. And then sometimes I'll get the like, oh, I don't need anything. And then they come up later and ask questions. Or right away, they'll just start word vomiting on me about their life and their love and their relationships. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I'm like, it's okay. It happens all the time.
I
Just keep
bet.
going.
I mean, if it makes you feel a little better, people do that with me about their startups.
I'm sure.
I mean, it's like, all right, so I mean, I think sometimes it's good to just let people do that.
If you're the kind of person that allows people the space to be themselves as well, because you are just so authentically you, I just think that that's an amazing gift, and keep doing it.
It's interesting because I really do get over the last several years, I have fielded a lot of questions, and because of what we do with Startup Hustle and other stuff, that the number of advice seekers has increased, and I don't mind at all. But I do set some boundaries up front.
Yeah.
I say, look, you need to remember you're asking. And then, so I have a couple of rules. One, don't waste my time.
Mhm.
And two, don't get mad at me if I don't tell you what you
Want to hear?
Yeah. If I'm not telling you what you want to hear,
Yeah.
I'm not interested in debating with you about why you're right and I'm not. And that is something that happens a lot, because people want to sell you on why their idea is right. And I'm like, you ask me for an opinion about how I think your business is going to go. And so I am overwhelmingly optimistic and positive, but there are parts of entrepreneurship and startups and all that I'm not doing you a service by just handing you a basket of roses and sunshine.
Agreed.
Like, you need to know that it's hard. Like, it's going to challenge every part of your will. I mean, it's going to like, and
I didn't have gray hair until I became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I had hair before or at least more of it, but it's true. And the thing is it's not for everyone. And that's what I try to let people know up front. And I feel that, sometimes the best advice that I can give you is to not do anything at all, or just have a strong understanding. One of the first things that I discuss in $1 Million Bedroom is that any business has to understand its path to revenue. Mm-hmm. And with your business, like, you're talking about acquiring 1, 2,
at this point right now,
4 clients or whatever. And like, you got to understand what that path is and how that the impactful nature of that.
Yeah.
Do you need another job? How are you going to pay for stuff? And and like what how are you going to figure it all out? Because you are a one person show.
Yep. And I had to go through all that. I did have a part-time restaurant job up until actually the beginning of this year. And I am now full-time focusing on my business. I have a little something on the side that pays for part of my expenses with a, guest room sharing.
Sure.
Yeah. Don't have to mention the website on there, but I had to make that decision about how was I actually going to pay my bills for the first couple of years. And I am to a point now where I have built up my business enough to where it's doing well. Listen
to that, people, the first couple of years. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where most people fail when it comes to that kind of planning for their business, is they think that it's like this, like the movie Field of Dreams, that if you build it, they will come. Not true.
No,
it is not true. It is actually like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake. You talk about some of the things that were really, really underestimated. Yeah. So that path to revenue is how long is it going to take you to make $1? Like with software, it's brutal. Mm-hmm. With service businesses, you can actually begin to generate revenue pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. With something like software, you have to build a pretty and then also you got to do a lot, and then grossly misunderstanding what people are actually willing to pay for, because we're in a world of free and freemium and stuff like that. And if you can't get them there, then you might not be able to convert them, and you're looking at a pretty heavy upfront cost. That's the reason that franchising is actually quite successful. A, it comes with an owner's manual,
Mhm.
and B, like if we go to open, a XYZ chain, you're going to have some built-in business. Well,
And a
like look at
brand
McDonald's. If we
yeah.
open a McDonald's, the moment we hoist those arches up in the air,
People are going to come through your
we
doors.
have a built-in sense
Yeah.
of people stopping by to get stuff. And that's not the case with startups or service businesses or stuff like that. So is there an actual franchise of sex coaching?
No.
There you go.
No.
There you go.
Well, so my goal is, right now I'm doing the one-on-one and couples coaching. I do workshops as well. I actually also have a couples intimacy retreat I'm hosting in Jamaica this May with another coach based in Portland. It's at an all-inclusive resort in Ocho Rios, and it's 4 days of, some workshops during the day and then free time in the afternoon and evening. Got to go back to room and practice
practical
some of those
application.
things.
There you go.
Yes, got homework. And we're going to do a recommitment ceremony at the end. So this is my first kind of foray into something like this big. I've done small scale workshops, and I do some educating throughout the community, like with some schools, frontier schools. I've done some parent academies talking about how to talk to your kids about healthy relationships. So while I'm, generating revenue with the one-on-one clients, I can go out and try and build relationships in the community. And trying to eventually get clients down the road. But I want to do online workshops. I want to write a book or 2 or 3. I'll probably start with a romance novel and then do my self-help book.
The best part about writing a book is finishing it.
I know, right?
Dude, writing a book can be a lot harder than people think. I'm 3 books into it. And, by the way, the best advice that I have anybody that wants to write a book is find a great editor.
Yeah.
Patrick Price. Thank you.
Did you self-publish or did you? Okay.
I did. And that's a whole nother thing that you got to deal with is trying to get through that. Amazon and their Kindle Direct platform has made it real easy to publish books. So you can basically, you upload a PDF.
Yeah. Wow.
But there's a lot that goes into it. You will hate your book before it comes out because you've read it so many times. You're like, fuck this, just publish it.
You know what I hate? I hate myself in video. Everyone keeps telling me that I need to get my YouTube channel up and I need to be doing, and I do eventually want to do it, but I have still got to clear the hurdle of disliking myself so much on video because I'm just the hypercritical one. And
speaking of which, if you want to see Kristen on video, you can go to the Startup Hustle podcast
Being
YouTube
in other
channel.
People's videos is fine. Yeah. It's fine. And I will totally post this video on my website. But when it's me and I'm the one who's looking at it and I'm editing it, I look at all the flaws and all the things I did wrong. And, one eye's a little more closed than the other one because I was tired that day or something. Like, ugh. So I have to get over that stuff.
So all right. So I'm 44. My hair is thinned. It has. Like I was watching, my wife and I went to Disney, and our 250th episode of this was called Matt Goes to Disney. And there were some highlights and I was using the YouTube video and I kept looking down and I was like, wow, my hair is like really gone. Now, part of that, like, would I prefer that it was opposite? Sure. I'm 44, man. I got 2 kids. It is what it is at this point. Some of that, even though I don't like it, I've just been like, all right, I'm just going to accept that. And it's hard though.
It is hard. And there's also a component of it that I want to be taken seriously for what I do. And I recognize, like, I'm an attractive woman. I don't want people coming to me because they want to be in an attractive woman's presence. I want them to come to me because they feel like I'm an expert and I'm going to help them change their lives. So I worry sometimes that video could put too much of something into people's minds of who and what I am and what I do. Like I try not to use my image to sell my services.
It's just easy to be critical of ourselves. I'm too fat. I'm too short. I don't have enough hair. My boobs aren't big enough. Whatever, and that's just like that's pretty typical.
Well, a moment of vulnerability here that I've shared on I think my show before. I lost 65 pounds and I've kept it off for a few years now, and that was my second time losing that weight. And so, there is a part of me who kind of feels like, okay, people wouldn't be telling me how pretty I am and how I should be doing this video stuff if I still weighed that much. Like, I see the differences in sometimes how people act when you're at one weight versus another. And
I'm pretty sure people have sex at all weights.
I know that, but I'm simply saying there's a little hang up in my brain about needing to let that go, and I haven't let it go yet.
I'm a big guy. I'm almost 6'4". I used to be 6'4", and as I got older, I think I shrank about half an inch. But and I'm a big dude, and as I've gotten older, it's been harder to like keep in a reasonable weight. I do work out a few days a week, but your body slows down, your body changes. And at one point I was like, man, I wrote a book about personal, professional, and physical. And like, maybe I should read my own book again. But some of that is just, in life, you just got to be able to be self-aware.
Yeah.
And check yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're moving along. Now, what do you think even as a service or coaching business has been the most fruitful form of client acquisition? Like if you had to pick one path and that's the only thing you could do going forward, what would you think?
The only way to get it would be my only way to get clients.
Sure.
The podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. That would be a tough decision for me, by the way. We at Full Scale, we do so many different things, which by the way, drives our COO mad because none of them are trackable.
Oh yeah.
It's so hard to track your ROI on a podcast. And then if you do a lot of different stuff.
When I'm doing my lead input that I'm putting like podcast as like where they came from. Because people do calls like, I heard you, or the email and say, I heard you, your podcast. Yeah. A friend shared it with me, or it was on someone else, your guest's social media pages. So I try to do a really good job of making sure they've got like the embeds and the social media links so they can share it out with their networks. Well, if you're doing an effective job, if you're doing an effective job, your podcast is in your newsletter, which is in your blog, which is in all these different things, and then you're like, oh wow, that was part of the talk this morning with my marketing guy. Yep, is about the next email that comes out is having that stuff lined up. Yep. Okay, so then another thing that service or coaching businesses or providers often so there's client acquisition and then there's client retention. Yes.
And so that's the thing. It's just because you acquire a client doesn't mean they're going to stick around.
Right.
So that's a whole nother deal. So now we've grown this business. I've got certified. I found some space. I created some heat, literally.
Yeah.
And I've done a few things to attract clients, but how do I keep them?
Well, that's the thing. Coaching isn't meant to be a long-term solution. So I go into this knowing that they are either going to stop seeing me, or I'm going to say like, you're kind of like, you're on your own. Like you're doing well.
Birdie,
like, yeah, you're graduated. Yes. So that was something that I did calculate out when I did my business plan. And when I'm looking at my projections and I'm thinking about, okay, this person's probably only going to see me for 6 to 8 sessions, I kind of calculated out that the percentages of people I thought were going to stay. So I actually need to go back and look at 2019. Now it's the end of January, and look at my numbers. What was my average length of stay? How many average sessions did each person in 2019 complete? So that way I can kind of refine my numbers looking for the next couple of years. Working as a weight loss coach in the company that I was in taught me a lot about kind of that aspect of running the business, looking at what is your average sale, what's your average length of stay, all those factors, because that does matter. You're going to have some people that see you for 2 sessions and some that see you for 12.
Yeah. The one thing that you can guarantee is that if you don't provide people with value, that they're not going to stick around.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And at Full Scale, we are a service business, and that's technical services. And I'll tell you what, you're used to generating X amount per client. Ours is significant. Like our average client's got multiple people on their team, is paying $16,000 a month or something like that. You better bet you're going to get dropped if you're not providing value.
Absolutely.
Some of the things that are important to provide value in a service business is there's simple things like we tell all of our employees at Full Scale to ask a couple questions every month. What can I do to help you? What can I do to make your life easier? That's a good question to ask.
Yes.
What can I do to be better at what I do? And then also asking those same questions of the people on your team that you're working with. And if you get enough of that going around, it brings a different, that you need your clients to understand that you do have a vested interest in their success. I tell our clients that up front. I say, look, your success is ours. If you're not successful with us as a service provider, you're not going to stick around. So let's figure out what that needs to occur. That said, it's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's level of success, like on a coaching level, someone might just want to, like you mentioned, like not feeling secure. It might be the first thing. And then someone else might have a whole list.
Absolutely.
And where do you start and what's important to that person? And sometimes it's also just about little tiny wins.
Yes. And I think that that's what I try to do in my coaching approach, is to help people recognize that, yes, change is slow, but, here are the things that I've seen you make progress in over the last 3 months. Like, I've seen growth in this area. You came to me wanting this, and now you're at this point with it. Like, pointing out the changes that I have seen, the growth that I've seen in people, helps them feel empowered. And because their progress is so slow. It's kind of like when you're trying to lose weight, all of a sudden you wake up one day, you're like, oh crap, my clothes don't fit anymore.
Yeah.
And you're looking in the mirror and you're seeing something different. Again, it's about 20 pounds. The people start going like, have you lost weight?
Yeah, but you can't tell yourself that you want to lose 20 pounds. You got to try to lose like 3.
Right?
Because your mind doesn't wrap itself around that.
It's small goals, but it's kind of like you wake up one day and go like, oh crap, look at how far I've come. And sometimes you need somebody to point out how far you've come to really acknowledge your success. So when I can show them the successes that they've had, it helps, bring it around to like, you made the right decision, not only to choose me as your coach, but to actually make change at this time in your life.
One thing we didn't mention earlier that I think it's important, we're talking about some of the things that, some of the personality traits or people that might not be good at coaching. If you can't tell people the honest truth about stuff, you're going to have a real hard time.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and that's
you can't be a yes person. You cannot.
No, and you know what? It's tough to tell people in a constructive way, because the first reaction to hearing anybody, regardless of how secure you are, the first reaction to not hearing that you're not doing something well is oftentimes, well, no.
Right. It's
you're wrong.
You put your walls up, right?
Right. It's just natural defense mechanism. But some of that, so it's funny, in the first page of my book, Balance Me, it says, if you're not willing to admit that you are probably your own biggest problem, just put the book back, because I can't help you.
Valid point.
Because we are all our own worst enemy in many regards. And then the second part of that says you need to acknowledge that change is tough. It's not easy, and it requires constant adjustment. So, those two, if you don't have those two things, and I think as a coach, it's pretty reasonable to tell someone that up front.
Yeah.
It's not everyone else's problem. It's probably you.
Or your reaction to everyone else. That's the
thing.
Like,
that's you though. But that's you.
If you can't control what's going on around you, all you can control is yourself. And I often focus on a 3-door approach. You stay and you do nothing. Stay in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's in a partnership, you're by yourself and you're kind of lonely, lost, miserable, whatever. If you are in this lane and you want to just stay in that lane and make no change, that's an option.
Yeah, then you're accepting
your current reality and you're doing nothing about it, but you're already there. So why not just stay?
Yeah.
See, you'll finally make change
that's the easiest thing
when there's
do.
Enough pain, right?
Yeah, that's the easiest thing to do, is just not do anything.
And then the second approach is ask for what you need, make the changes that you want, and see what happens. Talk to your partner about what you need to see improve in your relationship or your sex life, or you leave.
Yeah.
So I recommend it be kind of a progressive thing. You do not leave without having the conversation or without making the change. Do not walk away without trying something, because you probably will regret that. But yeah, if you have asked for your change multiple times and you can't get what you need, then those are your 3 options.
The whole thesis statement of my book, Balance Me, is it's really about goal attainment. And people often say, I don't have time for that. Well, you do. You're just not spending your time in ways that benefit you the most. So I attempt to be, it's literally called a realist guide to a successful life, because you can look at the things that you spend time doing and you have a lot of low value activity in your life. And I define a low value activity as things that prohibit you from moving towards any of your goals.
Yeah.
And as from a coaching perspective, that matters, like if someone, and then also, kind of backward engineering your success, figure out where success is a pretty repeatable thing. It's whether you're trying to obtain, improve things sexually or physically or however or professionally or any of that. You can figure out where you want to be and kind of work the steps backwards. Yeah. And people oftentimes look at a goal as one action, like completing a goal is like one thing. And an example I use is, one of the most common goals in the United States is I want to buy a home. Have you purchased a home? Because it requires a hell of a lot of different steps.
And that's why I haven't.
Well, that's my point. Yeah. It's not just like a singular action. You're like, hey, I'm going to buy a home. And then you go do it tomorrow. Like there's a lot, like it requires savings and planning and like a lot of different
the right credit score.
It's going to do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what are all those steps and how do you start putting check marks in boxes? So some of those are low hanging fruit and some of them are a little higher up on the tree, but the number one way, another common thing is like, well, not necessarily common, but a good example is people say, I want to learn to speak another language. Well, Americans spend 40 minutes a day on average in a car. Mm-hmm. And you could literally like get something like the Rosetta Stone and take a low, because commuting's a really low value activity unless you're listening to Startup Hustle. That's and right. Then you're a genius.
Or keep them coming with Open the Doors.
There
coaching.
You go. I like it. So, but with that, there are ways to bundle up, to turn low value activities into something a little more productive. So look into that. And by the way, if you're thinking about starting a sex coaching business, you could listen to the Open the Doors podcast. You can learn a lot of different stuff. You can also we're in this golden age of free information.
Yes.
Google.
Didn't Tesla just release all their stuff?
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure I just read, Are
we talking about the band or the car?
The car manufacturer. That they released all their patents.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an open source kind of thing. Because by the way, sometimes that leads to even more innovation.
That's exactly why Elon Musk said he wants to release it to save the planet. So.
We'll take it, and then here's a whole bunch of stuff, and it'll strike up a whole lot of other innovation, usually integrating with the parent. Mm-hmm. And then another thing too is people will figure that shit out anyway.
Yeah.
So
they can reverse engineer it.
Okay, so we
talked about a lot of stuff.
Thank you for coming in with that, and we've moved forward. Now, when we revisit this down the road, I think we want to get into what the next steps are and maybe talking about. So you've built a business with this, and congratulations on continuing to improve, continuing to build content. By the way, that takes a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
People all the time, they're like, hey, I want to start a podcast. What should I do? I'm like, you should have very low expectations. They're like, why? I'm like, because there's a million of them out there. And it's just building an audience and getting to that point. It requires continuous, consistent effort, a little thought, some preparation.
You really have something to say, honestly. The podcast world is too crowded to just be like two friends sitting around shooting the shit.
No, wait, that's Matt and I. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're not. No, you were definitely not. You were two friends who were talking about some very important stuff.
Well, some of that with that planning up front, it was also not making it so narrow of a topic that we would have run out of stuff to talk about on episode 12. Instead, we made it to like 15, and then we did hundreds more. But some of that is just, is you got to be committed to a long play with that. The same thing with any type of content marketing, and then just building a name. Yep. I mean, so many people look at others and say, wow, there's no such thing as an overnight sensation, by the way. If you really get into the facts, you'll find that person was probably grinding it out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a believer in luck. I just think that's preparation and opportunity and an intersection. Like people are like, well, what about a lottery winner? They prepared by buying a ticket. There you go.
Yeah.
You know why I'm not going to win the lottery later tonight? Because I'm not prepared. I'm not planning on buying a ticket. So I probably won't win. Well, once again, thanks for coming in. I want to invite you to continue to share the journey.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This will eventually build itself into your own series.
Maybe by the next time I'm here, I'll have finished one of my books.
Well, that's what I said. I want to continue to. We have this ongoing story that we want to gather from several local entrepreneurs because. Things change so quickly sometimes, and either plus or minus. And those that seemed willing to share that journey, I think will have something to continue to offer our podcast listeners.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, I'm going to get back to work.
Yeah, same.
All
I've
right.
got clients later.
See you next time.